Why Communism? Plain Talks on Vital Problems. Chapter 5. Section 3. The Struggle Against Fascism. We have mentioned above that the capitalist state changes its form and tactics in accordance with the interests of the ruling class. When social conditions are more or less stable, when no great mass movements threatens to overthrow the wealth of the owners, the state allows itself to appear democratic. You are told that the people are the actual rulers of the land. But even when the state appears in its democratic guise, it is democracy for the owners of wealth and dictatorship over the masses. The system in the United States is a democracy for the Morgans and the Mellons, the Rockefellers and the Fords, and everybody that counts, insomuch as it carries out their will. But what about the striking miners that are being gassed? What about the hunger marchers that are being clubbed? What about the textile workers that are being shot down in cold blood? What about the milk strikers that are being surrounded by squads of deputy sheriffs beaten and jailed? What about the legal weapon of injunctions used against strikers for fighting for the bigger cause of the crust of bread? What about the numberless cases of workers' blood being spilled for the sole reason that they're trying to defend their right to live? Democracy for the rulers, dictatorship over the workers. Terror, legal or extra-legal, is always used against the workers, even where there is a semblance of democracy preserved. This semblance, however, is easily and eagerly removed whenever it suits the interests of the rulers. The system we are living under in the United States can hardly be called a democracy, even in name. Even the pretense of representative government has been abandoned. Congress has ceded its prerogatives of lawmaking to one man, Roosevelt, who is a virtual dictator acting through a number of boards appointed by him. All this vast economic legislation that has been introduced now is not of congressional origin, has not received congressional approval. In foreign policies, Congress has long become nothing but a rubber stamp. While the treaty power is in the hands of the president and his advisors, there was once prevalent the theory of the balance of power between the legislative, judicial, and executive branches of the government. It is no accident that the executive branch has gained ascendancy over the rest. This is in keeping with the interests of Wall Street. It assures quick action. It makes for quiet deals away from the glaring light of publicity. It makes it unnecessary to dicker with numerous legislators who may have to reckon with the moods of their electors. Although, by and large, it has not been difficult for Wall Street to keep Congress in line. It clears the ground for further development along the road of open dictatorship. Wherever capitalist democracy is displaced by open capitalist dictatorship for the primary purpose of crushing the revolutionary labor movement that threatens capitalist rule and for the purpose of the state with big business in order to overcome the crisis of capitalism, there we have fascism. Fascism is brute force against the rising working class, which begins to challenge the capitalist power. Fascism at the same time attempts to organize industry and commerce on behalf of the owners of the wealth. The iron hand that is used against the workers and poor farmers is aimed to force them to accept lower wages and to worsen working conditions in order to thus secure greater profits for the employers. Government regulation of industry and commerce, government subsidies and aid from the Treasury, i.e. the taxes squeezed out of the masses of the population, also have the purpose of increasing profits of the great industrialists and bankers. Fascism is a form of government which reduces the overwhelming majority of the population to abject poverty and degradation so that the few heads of large corporations may prosper. Fascism uses both strong arm and oppression and other methods of crassest demagogy. In order to beguile the dissatisfied masses, fascism sometimes uses anti-capitalist phrases. It thunders against exploitation. It promises the abolition of classes. It poses a friend of the small man. At the time, it tries to divert the attention of the exploited and the real cause of their misery by arousing the nationalistic prejudices, by promising them prosperity as a result of national aggrandizement, by persecuting national minorities. Such has been the case in Italy, Hungary, Poland. Such is the case for Germany, where we have fascism in its sharpest manifestations. Fascism, however, may assume different forms and may appear in varying degrees. We in the United States witness a growing fascization of the state. Those attempts to prevent workers from striking, those NRA codes supposed to organize industry and commerce by the state regulation, that partnership between the government and industry and government and labor that has been proclaimed as the policy of the Roosevelt administration, that reign of terror that is sweeping strikes areas of the country. What is it not if not the manifestation of fascist tendencies? The dictatorship of one man so eagerly acquiesced by everybody except, of course, the revolutionary workers. What is it, if not something very much akin to fascism? That propaganda of supranationalism, which comes from high places in Washington, especially after the collapse of London Conference, it is not reminiscent of the fascist tactics. We have no clear-cut fascism yet in this country, but we certainly have a fascination of the governmental apparatus, and there is being developed an atmosphere where fascism may quickly become the order of the day. The trend towards fascism was clearly analyzed at the Anti-War Congress, which met September 29, 1933, with over 2,600 delegates from various workers and other organizations. The Congress organizes a permanent body of the League of Struggle Against War and Fascism. The Afro people. One of the major policies of American capitalism is the oppression of the Afro people. The Afro people as workers or farmers are more exploited and more cruelly oppressed than even the white workers and farmers. The Afro people are paid less for the same work. They're discriminated against the matter of jobs. Intellectual Afro people are not admitted altogether to certain occupations. And this holds true not only in the South, but also for all parts of the country. In order to maintain and perpetuate this economic inequality, which means additional profits for landlords and manufacturers, the white ruling class is subjecting the Afro people to a system of political and social inequality and degradation. Jim Crow segregation is ironclad in the South, but is also used in other sections of the country as evidenced by the rigid color line drawn in New York around Harlem. Most Afro people are disenfranchised. The South especially does not recognize any political rights for the Afro people, but elsewhere the Afro people are not much better off politically or socially. To ensure this double inequality of white ruling class conducts the most vicious propaganda among the white masses against the Afro peoples, presenting the latter as an inferior race, unfit for civilization. To back up this system in the interest of bloodsuckers, they are using specific American weapon of lynching. We communists say to the white and Afro workers, comrades, we understand the meaning of this system as established to maintain the benefit of the bosses. When they speak about the purity of the white race, they in reality mean the profits of the white exploiters. When they speak about the white race being the master race, they're in reality concerned with piling up more millions for the masters. They tell white workers not to assemble in the same hall with Afro workers. They try to prevent white and Afro workers from uniting to fight against their common bosses. When they say the Afro man must know his place, they mean he must allow himself to be worked to death for a pittance, to be hounded without any aid to his white fellow toilers. When on behalf of the bosses, the labor bureaucrats refuse to admit Afro workers into the labor unions, they are out to prevent the coming together of a mutual understanding between white and Afro exploitation. When the bosses together with their police and court officials organize lynch orgies, they are out to terrorize Afro people in order to prevent them from offering resistance. And when they persecute and torture and kill Afro people, they have in mind not only the extra blood and sweat that they can get out of Afro toil, but as greater freedom to exploit the white workers and farmers. For they know well that when you set one part of an enemy camp against the other, you weaken both. By their terrorist activities against the Afro people, comparable to the activities of the German fascist brands, they weaken not only Afro people but also the white workers and farmers because they forestall their united action against the common foe. Another chapter of American capitalist rule is the oppression of colonial and semi-colonial peoples, like those of Hawaii, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, Cuba, and many others. Wall Street capitalists are taking the cream off of these countries, leaving workers and the poor farmers in servitude, poverty, and starvation. How the fighting is to be done. We communists say it is the duty of the workers to fight against capitalist terror, against manifestations of fascism, against the oppression of Afro people, against the imperialist domination of other peoples. We say it is our interest to fight. We appeal to the class interest of the workers and the other exploited masses of the population. Stand guard, offer resistance to capitalist terrors. Fight for your right to organize, to assemble, to strike. Break the capitalist dictatorial rules directed against you. Do not submit. Strike back. Join hands with the oppressed nationalities groaning under the iron heel of American imperialism. Above all things, join hands with the Afro members of your class. Remember, the class ties are the strongest of all ties. You are exploited by the same set of robbers, the ruling class. You are persecuted and oppressed by the state, acting on behalf of the same class. You can liberate yourself only when you join forces against your oppressors. In unity is your strength. Black and white, foreign-born and native worker, your interests are the same as the directly opposed to the interest of your rulers. Freedom must be fought for, and this fight cannot wait. It is a matter requiring action now and every day. Your employers try to prevent you from organizing. Organize. They will try to fire you organizers. Stand pat. Defend them. They will try to discharge more answer by calling a strike. Picket the plant. They will send policemen and hire deputies to break up your picket line. Stand firm and don't yield. They will send reformist union leader to persuade you to accept the boss's arbitration. Drive him out like a yellow cur. They will put some of your leaders in jail. Demonstrate, protest, fill the courtroom with hundreds of workers. Demand the release of your comrade. Picket the courthouse. Picket the judge's house. Call other workers to help in your struggle. Make your struggle the struggle of great numbers of the class of conscious workers. Your masters send Marines against Latin American country, as was recently done in Cuba when 29 warships were mobilized to crush the workers' and farmers' revolution. Armed intervention in Cuba is an actual fact. Your masters will always aid the local exploiters against whom the masses have arisen. Their aim is to maintain the Latin American countries as a puppet of the government, submissive to Wall Street, because Wall Street is getting hundreds of millions out of the toil of the local masses. Remember that you cannot be free as long as the colonial and semi-colonial masses are oppressed. Remember that this is the same enemy you are fighting against in the same struggle that will liberate all of you. It is for this reason that the workers have to fight against every step of American imperialism, extending a brotherly hand of aid to the peoples of oppressed countries. The bloody anti-Afro terrorism is cutting into the very vitals of the working class. Resist, violate the Jim Crow rules, both in the North and in the South. Unite Afro people in the same unions and the same cultural and social organizations. Afro and white fight side by side. Stop the lynch crimes. Organize. Teach lynchers the lessons of a unified class resistance. Make them feel in their very bones that one cannot murder members of your class and escape unpunished. One strong, united front of white and Afro workers and poor farmers meets the lynchers in the proper manner, they can put an end to those murderous attacks. Remember, by fighting for full economic, political, and social equality of the Afro people, the workers are fighting for their own liberation. When we communists say freedom, we mean it. You white workers must show your colored brothers that you are in the interest of the Afro equality. How can you prove it? The proof is not in words but in action. The reformists pay lip service to Afro rights, but they don't mean it. They have never fought for Afro rights. We communists are the only party that has introduced Afro equality to the practice of our organizations and our everyday fights. We say to the white workers, to prove your sincerity about Afro freedom, you must fight for the self-determination of the Afro people in the Black Belt. By this we mean the right of the Afro people, if they choose to do so, to establish their own state in the territory of the South, where they are the majority of the population. The Afro people are a nation like any other nation, and they are entitled to their own state. We have enumerated the basic struggles of the workers. There are many more struggles. Each day brings its own task. Each step the capitalists and their state demands new struggles of the workers. These struggles are not separated from each other. They're intertwined into a united whole. One struggle helps another. One victory makes others more easy. All of them strengthen the working class. All of them weaken the capitalist system. The struggle is always for immediate demands, but if it inevitably implies the ultimate goal, overthrow of the capitalist system. If you keep your eyes open, you will soon realize that only those who are for the overthrow of the capitalist system actually fight for the immediate demands. The reformist labor leaders and the socialists, who are not fundamentally opposed to capitalism, are not fighting for immediate demands. They take the instance of strikes or the struggle for unemployment insurance. Whatever fighting has been done in the last few years for higher wages and unemployment insurance and relief was done under a revolutionary leadership with the closest participation of the communists, who are in favor of the overthrow of the capitalist system by force. Those struggles have not been invented. They are a necessity. They are the outcome of existing conditions. They are vital to the very existence of the workers. With the deepening of the crisis, with the increase of the number of the unemployed, with the increase of the war danger, with the increase of the capitalist attacks on the living masses, with the increase of the fascist danger, with the increase of lynch terror, mass struggles of the workers have become greater necessity than ever. These struggles will be more effective, the greater the masses that participate in them and the stronger their unity and will to fight. This is why the communists advocate for a united front of action. By this we mean that all workers, no matter what their organization or party affiliation, shall unite for specific actions. To take one instance, the struggle for unemployment relief could be much more successful if great masses of workers, whether socialists or communists, whether member of red unions or reformist unions, were to unite in their action to support that demand. The same holds true for the fight for Afro rights. The same holds true for the fight against war danger and for any other line of struggle. We therefore appeal to the workers to unite. We explain to them the vital necessity of united action. We say, you may belong to any party, to any labor union, or you may belong to none. Or you may or may not have disagreements with the communists on certain issues. What we urge you to do is unite and fight on the issues that are of basic importance for the working class. In calling you to a united front, we have no other interest at heart but the interest of the working class. If your reformist leaders disagree, use your own judgment. If possible, force these leaders to yield to a united front. If they are so entrenched in the service of capitalism that they do not heed to your demand, overrule them and join the united front. We propose that the United Front activities should be carried out under the leadership of especially elected committees representing all sections of the workers united for a particular action. Much malicious gossip has been peddled around by reformists as our United Front tactics. They say we are trying to capture this or that organization and make it serve our communist purpose. Above all, they complain that we are criticizing them, abusing them, while we are seeking to unite them in a united front. The truth is we have no other purposes but the purpose of carrying through a successful fight. We do not wish to capture anybody or anything by maneuver, although we are eager to influence workers and to attract them to our ranks by making them realize the correctness of our program and tactics. As to criticism, we always criticize those organizers which, while pretending to defend the interests of workers, do not follow the line of class struggle and thus betray them. We agree to suspend our criticism of reformist leaders in connection with the United Front action and faithfully carry out their pledges in this United Front. If they try to sabotage the United Front, if they try to continue to betray the interests of the workers in the connection with the United Front, then it is our duty before the workers to expose their betrayal. The more clearly we do that, the sooner will the workers free themselves from the damaging reformist influence and join the United Front of action.